I would like to welcome all of you to our first ever Lunch and Learn, a question and answer session with an expert on the field. My name is Phyllis Hillwig. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Words and Numbers, and really excited to be bringing Donna Balado to you and talking through the NGSS classroom perspective. As those of us are in product development, the best data at the end of the day is really from the ground floor, where you're getting perspectives from the classroom teachers and the student experience, and so we're delighted to have this opportunity to do this. This session is for you, so we would like you to ask any and all of your questions to Donna, and please feel free to type them into the chat box so that we can capture them and make sure that they do get addressed. We do also have several questions that we will ask Donna directly that are in line with the spirit of understanding the classroom perspective around NGSS. And all of this will be recorded, and you will have access and certainly could share that out to colleagues as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Donna Balado. She is currently the president of the Maryland Science Teacher Association, a current high school teacher. And the wonderful thing about Donna's background is that she does have a publishing background as well, so she understands the market dynamics around product development and making sure that that is in line with market expectations. So before we move to our first question, I'd like to just share a short story. I met a good friend of mine who has students, her kids are in New York, public schools, and so I asked her how things were going in the classroom and how's Common Core going. I know you engage New York. You know, New York's been a real big active player in that space. And she says, oh gosh, you know, it's the teachers are you know, some of them are really excited, but many of them are overwhelmed. They're trying to figure out what to do, and I just don't know how this Common Core thing's going to pan out in New York. And so one question I had for Donna is, we're talking about NGSS, and is this really real? Like, should we worry about NGSS when we're in the process of still trying to figure out Common Core? And if we do have to worry about NGSS, you know, is it now that we have to worry, or is it something that we can, you know, see how it goes with the implementation of Common Core and then kind of address NGSS? So just wanted to start with that question, and we'll move forward from there.
Okay. First, thank you, Phyllis, for having me today, and thank you to those of you that are participating. I hope I provide some useful information for you. NGSS is real. NGSS is not only real and here. I was actually in the process of participating in creating curriculum this summer in Carroll County, Maryland, but it is being adopted regularly, and based on my experience in medical publishing and medical textbook publishing specifically, I think it's a very good idea to clue into it now so that product development cycles, as they are, that you have a window of opportunity to have resources ready when the market is really in full demand mode within the next 3 to 4 years.
I just saw a note about the audio. If you are having some problems with the audio, if you could just type us a quick chat, and we'll try to troubleshoot on the side there. So thank you so much for that. And again, please feel free to type in any questions that you have for Donna. So if it is real, and it is what you're saying, how do you think the transition of NGSS will happen? You know, how will it be implemented? I think that's really a big core question here. It's real. We got to do something about it. But how is this going to get from kind of the idealistic phase to the implementation phase?
Well, the first things that are going to happen are states are going to adopt the standards or develop their own standards based upon next generation science standards. I can tell you locally in the state of Maryland, Maryland is saying that we have to be fully implemented with the curriculum within the next 3 years. Nationally, there are 7 states that have adopted, but in my county, which is very close to home, we are already actively working with curriculum that is wrapped around NGSS. It's not 100% of our curriculum, but we're already building in very focused on the practices and the cross-cutting concepts today. So it's happening, it's phasing in is what's happening.
And I know you spoke about Maryland a little bit. Do you have any, being the president of the Maryland Science Teacher Association, do you have insights on what the other states are doing and how many states are implementing and participating actively, fully, and actively? Please comment on that.
Sure. As of today, there are 7 states that have formally adopted: Maryland, Delaware, California, Rhode Island, Kansas, Vermont, and Kentucky. And if you're looking at the map, you can see that these are states that were part of the 26 lead state partners. And what that means, lead state partners had individuals who were writing the standards, participating in writing the standards. So they already have a stake, a very heavy stake in adopting. Those states that have not adopted and were not part of the 26 lead states, I participated in a national meeting this summer where I spoke with people from Texas, I spoke with people from Oklahoma, and they probably will not adopt. However, they were talking about creating their own standards based upon the content of next generation science standards and the framework. So it's ultimately driving all of the changes in science education.
And I guess this will lead me to the next question here is, given where Common Core is, what are some of the challenges that we're finding teachers and students facing in this, implementation and transition phase? I mean, clearly, I think they're still going through a lot of that with Common Core, reading, language, arts, and mathematics, and now you're saying, yes, we need to address NGSS. What are some of the main challenges?
The biggest challenge comes from the fact that there are so many parts and pieces that are changes ultimately that affect every teacher. And the list of those changes are Common Core. Maryland has a state STEM standard that has been put into place, and there are expectations around that. NGSS, there's new evaluation criteria for teachers and principals. And on top of that, Maryland has an environmental literacy standard that's been put into place. So there's a lot, and all of these affect every teacher. So there's a lot to put together.
Well, can you just describe for me how a classroom, how the classroom teacher is dealing with this? What is a typical classroom teacher's reaction and with implementing this in this stage? Do they, if you can just talk about their day in the life of with this?
Well, one of the goals is that the teachers will be collaborating more, and I think that that's part of what's actually happening. At least it's happening at my school, because we're providing a lot of support for each other. And no one is expecting us to have this all 100% done this year, so there's at least what's happening is everyone is in the same mode of we're all learning this together, including the administrators. So there's it's a very supportive atmosphere. So for example, an administrator will come in my classroom to observe, and they'll have a list of the practices from NGSS, and they will look at the list of practices and let me know at the end of it that it's okay, you hit a few of these already, great job. So the focus is very supportive and very positive in my own school. So we're working on it every day.
But I guess in your own school, it sounds like you're having a positive, very encouraged experience. Are you finding that that's true in most schools, or can you comment on some of the other schools that you're aware of?
Well, we just had our state conference a few weeks ago, and it seems as though, now granted, these are anecdotal, this is not a research study, but
of course,
anecdotally, it sounds like that's happening across the state.
Okay.
So it sounds good. We'll see how the next year goes.
Well, and audience members, clearly you all have some experience too with this, and so any insight and feedback that you have that you'd like to share with the rest of the group, please feel free to type that into the chat box, and I will read it. One comment from the audience in the chat, it says, want to emphasize Donna's point that many states that aren't lead partners will use the standards and as core or major influences for their new state standards. So once again, this is real, it's happening, and we should really pay attention to it basically right now or before that. So so I think the challenges with the teachers and students, you're saying there are some with all of these new criterias and so forth, but there is that encouraged atmosphere, and is there a latitude of time so that the testing requirements and the full implementation, is there going to be some time to allow for that?
Well, in terms of Common Core, I'm sure everyone realizes that this year there will be part testing, and part testing, ELA part testing impacts science because science content is being used, so we're trying to all team up on that. As far as next generation science standards specific testing, we probably have a little bit of time, because right now so much focus is being placed on securing and creating and solidifying the testing for Common Core. But it's not going to be far behind, because what's being learned with PARC will probably be applied to next generation, I think. That's my speculation based on what I've seen. And the organization that managed the process of the standards development for NGSS is also the organization that's working with PARC to manage the rollout of the PARC test. So it's all connected. It's all coming together. But we have a little bit of time on the testing for NGSS.
So when you say a little bit of time, is that 5 months, 3 months, a year?
I think it's within the next 3 to 4 years. We'll start
next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think we have 3 or 4 years. I think. If it comes sooner than that, then I'll be back and keep my words. But
why do you think 3 or 4 years? Like, what's giving you that number?
Well, in Maryland, our implementation plan is expected to occur over 3 years, and that's straight from MSDE, and updated a couple weeks ago. And then within the states that have adopted, they're also, California plans on starting implementation in 2014. Kansas is on a 4-year plan. Kentucky is starting in 2014, 2015. Rhode Island is on a 4-year plan. And I believe Delaware is following suit. So nobody's trying to rush this in. The goal is to try to bring it in and have it be, someone stated it as there was a quote in one of the articles I read that it was going to be like a light that gradually got brighter and brighter and brighter as the couple of years went on.
Okay. So then I guess the next question is an interesting one too. I mean, clearly, professional development is a big need in Common Core right now, but it's specifically with the NGSS. What types of professional development tools and support will we need to see there from the product side?
The biggest need in professional development is going to be transitioning basically the paradigm of teaching from, and it's been happening over time using techniques from UDL and understanding by design, and then making sure that the incorporation and the clear understanding of the standards are in place. So, for example, how to model, how to achieve a standard of students modeling a concept and being able to apply that concept across topics. There are some avenues right now. I know the schools have been providing professional development. The Maryland Association of Science Teachers is planning professional development activities. We've got a couple of things already scheduled for the spring. In addition, we had our October conference where we had a whole strand that was strictly around NGSS. NSTA is very, very heavily involved in providing webinars to help the process. So there's some out there, there's some that's begun, and I know some of the publishers have talked about trying to support professional development for the teachers as well.
So how are the teachers finding time for it, and how are the states accommodating for this? Because, I mean, clearly it's needed. Is this just, yes, we need it, but how are they finding the time? And do they have the budgets to pay for the teachers to have that kind of time?
We should be careful about getting started on budgets, because that's a whole hour conversation more, because that's all political. But no, we don't. Nobody has the money, and so much money has been placed in so many areas that there's not much for professional development. So there is some, and it's having talked with the county supervisors, they're trying to be very strategic with the funding that we do have. You know, and trying to incorporate things in school during, you know, using collaboration time in school that's, you know, already available to us. But teachers, you know, teachers are an interesting breed, as you're probably aware. They will do what they need to do to provide the right education for the students, even if they don't have money in a lot of cases. But there's a lot of PD on the books that is available that in some cases will provide you with some stipends or some support. Like, for example, I'm going to a PD in December where the professional development organization is paying for my sub, so the school doesn't have to. So that's the kind of thing. It's kind of partnerships all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Well, but what does PD look like in the sense of, is it going to be go home and do this online by yourself? Is it go sit in a classroom with a bunch of other folks and train, like more the traditional model, in service? Is it a combination? Because I think, you know, from a product development side, it would be helpful to know, especially if there's budget and time issues, where are they going to get this training, and are they flexible with how they're getting the training?
Well, I think there's flexibility based on what I've seen, because I've seen a lot of different formats. But one of the things that happens is, for example, at our school, monthly faculty meetings, a portion of the monthly faculty meeting is set up as collaborative workshops for teachers to work together and work on, you know, wrestling with, you know, how are we going to incorporate these practices, what are we going to do with the curriculum. We have Edmodo groups where we have access to content from each other and we collaborate across schools. So it really, it varies. It's going to vary from school to school, but you're not expected to necessarily be doing a lot of this on your own, even though a lot of teachers will anyway. There
is a question from David P. I'll just read it real quick here. And it's basically the idea of it is, you know, with the states adopting the NGSS standards, do you see, you know, 50 totally different set of standards, or do you kind of see, you know, how is, you know, the idea of the Common Core is that all the states would have a set of math and ELA standards that would be coherent and common across states. Do you see that happening with NGSS, or do you see states kind of adapting that, which would kind of go against the idea of the Common Core standards? So talk a little bit about that, please.
Okay, the difference in the science standards, if you want to be a student of it, go back and read the framework that was published in 2011, and then if you look at the standards and you just take, say, one small section of the standards, say the life sciences for one grade band, a state that is not necessarily adopting NGSS is not necessarily going to stray too far from that standard. Based on the conversation I had with these teachers, what's going to happen is they're going to modify some of the language to make it more palatable for their state. And very specifically, you know, there is a teacher that told me that in our state we cannot use the word evolution. We cannot use the word climate change. So they're going to craft the language so that they can get the content in and they don't have to wind up getting knocked out, you know, because of the political issues, that they don't wind up getting knocked out because of semantics, for lack of a better term.
Well,
so the standards, no, I don't think you're going to see, I don't think the intent of the standards as the national standards are going to be diluted that much by states creating their own versions. To your question.
Yeah, because I think, putting on the product development hat on for you back in, the nice thing about Common Core is that, we're all working from the same set of standards and we develop the product once and, it matches up. And so when you talked about NGSS and changing language and so forth, I guess the natural thought was, oh gosh, do we have to have 50 different versions or 10 versions? And that's especially, in this, budget climate. So what I think what you're saying is that the real core is still going to be 99% NGSS, and there might be a tweak or two based on language, or am I overestimating that?
No, I think it's going to. If I were putting on my publisher hat, and I were in a position where I were creating product, right, and planning a product and acquiring product for this, I would be focused on the big picture of the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the disciplinary core ideas. And then the specific standards come under that. But if you focus on those kind of big overarching ideas, I think you have a shot at not having to create 56 different textbooks. Unless you are doing it electronically and somebody can pick and choose what they want to take from it. But if you're trying to put something together, I would focus on those big ideas.
Fabulous. We do have a question from Patrick regarding the intersection of STEM and NGSS in terms of professional development. On the surface, it would seem to make sense that teachers would be driving towards one overall strategy for implementation of STEM and NGSS, yet they were related, at least for Maryland, as discrete portions. Are there places where places in PD that NGSS related include STEM, or do you see them separated?
I don't. Good question, by the way, and it's a valid question because it was a question that was on my mind last spring, and then I was I had the opportunity to go to the Educator Effectiveness Academy put on by the state, where it was made very, very clear that STEM and NGSS really are not that different. Basically, the STEM standards, if you look at the STEM standards, they align not only with the NGSS overall standards, but they also align with the Common Core, ELA, and math standards. They all line up together very nicely. And the STEM standards, the big idea behind the STEM standards is to facilitate getting teachers collaboratively working across all disciplines. So they really are not all that separate when you dive into them.
So when you're building materials, do you still have to look at both, or can you can you just get away with looking at one and that's it?
If I'm focused on NGSS, which I have been creating curriculum, I'm hitting the STEM standards.
Okay, that's really the question.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that's going on in Maryland, and this is specific to Maryland, I don't know if this is happening outside of Maryland, but Maryland Business Roundtable is supporting the development of STEM lessons and the development of STEM across the STEM standards across the state. Their latest round is they've got 2 schools in every county identified as STEM innovation schools, and they're providing support with a website, which is, again, another entire conversation. But it's all, if you're doing NGSS, you're doing STEM.
Okay, wonderful summary. So moving on to the next question, are you aware of any products that exist or are in development that address NGSS that you can hold up there and say, you know what, if we had more of this, this would be fabulous. Are you aware of anything that's out there that currently meets or is close to or gives the best kind of representation for NGSS at this point?
I do know, I'm aware of, from our recent conference, I'm aware of companies like Houghton Mifflin and McGraw and Pearson that are actively trying to align their products and putting things together. One of the things that I have learned about this fall that I intend to learn a lot more about, that Carroll County has adopted Discovery's tech book and Discovery's materials, their tech book and streaming video, and that's for K through 8 at this point in Carroll County, and that seems to be a package that supports NGSS pretty straightforwardly, which is incredible because the elementary teachers are the ones that are in the deepest hole at this point, trying to get caught up on science. But Discovery Textbook is probably the only thing I've seen that's right now ready to go. Mm-hmm. And we haven't adopted it for high school, and I honestly am not sure whether they don't have something for high school or whether it's just that we don't have the funds to support that. But that's through a grant that the school was able to do that.
And do you see these next generation products be 100% digital, especially with some of the standards around labs? And I mean, how do you see addressing the NGSS standards moving forward?
Well, the more that can be done digitally, the better, and that's purely from a very selfish personal point of view, because I use online resources with my students quite a bit, and I connect them through Edmodo, run my classes through Edmodo so they can work from home. With the increase of flipped classrooms, that would also be a very valuable way to go, to be able to allow students because students need to be able to access content anywhere they are. And with more schools looking very, very seriously at something called BYOD, bring your own device, I would take that very seriously, because kids are coming to school with their phones, and right now we don't like them in the classrooms, but at some point we're going to be embracing them and having them use them that way.
But, okay, I'll challenge you a little bit, Donna. Are
Sure.
you an outlier? I mean, in that, you seem to be very comfortable around technology and uses and so forth. I mean, is your experience a typical experience of teachers in your school and teachers that you're aware of out there teaching science? And how comfortable would the average teacher, using digital materials to support NGSS, how supportive would they be in your prediction?
Completely valid, because I am kind of a tech geek, if you will. One of the things is you need kids to be able to have more hands-on time with things. So if they can look something up, or they can look something up outside the classroom, I'm all for that, because I want their hands-on stuff in the classroom. But the support for teachers to come up to speed in these ways is there, and it's going to be a need. So
are you saying that the average teacher out there is not as comfortable with the necessarily the digital delivery of materials, and we're talking about NGSS, and there will be support that's required or needed, or do you think we're beyond that?
Oh no, I think we're still in transition, because I have actually been surprised by younger teachers that were not as comfortable with technology. I thought teachers, and by the way, you guys can't see me, but you go from my little resume at the front that I'm not a younger teacher, newer teacher, not younger teacher. But the younger teachers that are coming out straight out of school that are 22, 23 years old, I thought they would be 100% technology push, and they're not. And they're not 100% comfortable with it. So there's still that support that's still transitioning.
Okay.
But I'm seeing, I'm still seeing elementary school kids that have iPads, and that's what I'm looking at coming up at me. And so that's the market that's coming.
Okay. Then we have a couple more questions, and I like to open the floor up again. And anytime, if you have a question, please type it into the chat box. This is for you, audience. So please take full advantage. Our next question is: when now put on your evaluator hat, and now you're looking at products and programs that would support NGSS. What are some of the main check boxes or traits that you would look for in a program that would say, yes, this is something that I would move down the approval list?
Something that I would go and stand in front of the school board and say, I support this?
Correct.
That would be the question. For right now, what I am looking for is, and I've mentioned this before as a way I would approach it, but this is also what I would look for, is does the product emphasize, reinforce the science and engineering skills, and clearly make the distinctions and provide opportunities for kids to get their hands in and practice science skills and engineering skills. And then the cross-cutting concepts. The cross-cutting concepts are all about, for example, patterns. You see patterns in physics, you see patterns in bio, you see patterns in chem. So I would be looking for how does the product handle the cross-cutting concepts. And then not any less a priority are what's referred to as the DCIs, but they're the disciplinary core ideas. So if those things are covered and organized in a way that is similar to the way NGSS is set up, it makes it that much easier for me to create curriculum, and that's what I'd be looking for.
And are you again a representative? Like, will other science teachers be looking for similar things in your mind? And go ahead.
Yes, I believe so, because right now the big task is creating the local curriculum that will implement the standards, and any of us, and we're all working together to do that. So that's what we're looking at first, and this year we're focusing on the skills. So if something were to come across, if I were to come across something that covered all three, I would be very inclined to use that and be pushing for that to be something that we require for students.
How is engineering, just to take engineering here, being addressed? Because it wasn't necessarily a standard in the past, and yet you're introducing it much earlier, and many of the teachers, frankly, don't know a whole lot about engineering. And so while they may be comfortable teaching some of the standards because they are familiar to them, certainly this one is not. So how would you advise product developers or teachers to get more familiar or comfortable with this particular strand?
Well, first things first, I would keep it as simple as possible. There is a beautiful, beautiful, and I wish I had this specific page reference for you, but within the framework for science education that again, it was published in 2011, there is a wonderful table that clearly, side by side, describes the distinctions between the two and what we are to focus on. And it makes it a very, very easy thing to implement in a classroom. In fact, I just recently had a discussion with my AP Environmental Science class where I said, okay, some of you may be looking at the engineering focus, and we talked about what that was, and some of you may be looking at the science focus, and we talked about what that was. And it makes for a very, very nice classroom differentiation that can happen. So there's a great description there, and that's what I was involved with training teachers in service this year, and we used that to help them with that.
Okay. We'll try to remember the name of the resource and send it out.
Framework for Science Education.
Ah, there you go.
And I can send you the link if you want it.
No, that would be great. We'll include that. So the Framework for Science Education, just to re-say that. Okay. Oh, we do have a question from David. What are the high-level view of differences in NGSS capacity between K-5 and 6-12? So, for example, do you see more teachers supporting K-5 and less so at 9-12? And so, can you talk more about that? Like, do you find more support for science in the lower grades than in the upper grades? Are you seeing that?
In terms of, I'm not completely clear on the question. So are you asking about teachers' capacity? Are you talking about administrative support, board level support?
I think, and David, if you want to unmute and ask your question, feel free, if that's easier.
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, it is kind of a confusing question, but I guess it's just more of an open-ended question about what kind of differences, if any, Donna would be thinking will happen as K-12 schools move toward implementation of NGSS between, say, the K-5 range and middle school to high school. And one example of that difference might be there's a great deal more teacher support is going to be looked for from publishers or content providers for K-5 than the other grades. Or another kind of difference might be, is there going to be less effort by administrators at high school level around NGSS alignment versus in the elementary grades, or is that a difference that won't exist? Just two different examples, but there may be others that Donna might see about how elementary grades versus, say, middle school or high school are going to be moving toward, or what their needs are going to be, or their sense of the need is going to be in moving toward NGSS compliance.
Okay, I think I'm following you now, David. Thank you for the extra crumbs through the forest. Yeah, it's a Balado-ism. Just roll with it. I think, and I hope I answer your question because I'm thinking about what's happening right now and what has been happening. One of the trends we've been seeing in Maryland and probably elsewhere is having science specialists in K through 5. So some teachers kind of taking on the science specialist role. What had happened this summer when NGSS was adopted in Maryland, the pre-service activities and the pre-service curriculum work that was being done, high school teachers were being teamed up with elementary teachers as mentor teachers to provide support, because the elementary teachers are tasked with teaching everything, and some of them are more confident in their science knowledge, the content knowledge, and some of them are less confident. So the high school science teachers were asked to provide some content knowledge support for that, and we have. So that's one aspect, I think, of what you were asking. The other is that even at the administrative levels and the content supervisory levels, you're seeing more collaboration to try to support. The support needed in K through 5 is probably much greater because there are probably fewer teachers that are, that their undergraduate degrees were in the sciences, bottom line. So their knowledge and their confidence is not as high. Does that answer it, David?
It does answer one big possible difference.
A little bit of it.
Another though is, do you think that there's going to be as much attention at the high school level on programs or assistance from companies like ours that can address movement toward NGSS than there is at the elementary grades, or is that kind of a made-up difference that won't really be true, that in their different ways all levels of K-12 are going to be very actively engaged in looking for materials and assistance that help them move toward NGSS?
Oh, I think it's going to be, everyone's going to be looking very actively. I know at the high school level we already are, and we're always looking for something. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty much equivalent across the board because everybody is shifting daily what it looks like in the classroom and trying things out.
Okay, thanks.
Just to ask you a quick temperature, what is the temperature in the teachers' lounge these days with all of these different changes and NGSS in particular? Are they excited? Are they frustrated? Are they combination of both? Or just and is it something that it's like, yeah, I know I got to deal with it, but I know I can work through it, and so what's the general temperature? Are they ready to throw their hands up, or just give us that? And I know I'm throwing this at you, but
oh, that's
good
all right.
to know.
Yeah, that's all right. I think it's all over the place. I think we're probably going to see a lot of retirements this year. I think, yeah, you know, there are teachers that have 25, 30 years in that are saying, you know what, I went through this in the 90s, the last time you know, when the voluntary state curriculum came in, I'm not doing it again, and they may be retiring. There are brand new teachers coming in that really don't know any different, so they're fine. You know, they're trying to figure out how to get control of their classroom. So I think it's just, honestly, I'm sorry, but it's all over the map.
Sure, sure.
It's all over the map.
I just wanted to put that out there. So I guess the final question I have for us today is, you know, when will the school districts really need the new programs? You know, when will it have to be ready? Because I think those of us on the phone really would like to just plan ahead, and knowing that from today there is a need, what kind of timeline are we talking about? Could you comment on that?
Sure. Well, in my school, I would like something today, but I realize that's impossible. I would say that the window of opportunity, you know, it's gradually going to increase, but to be reasonable, if a publisher can work quickly, if they have something available to market within the next 3 to 4 years, I think that's going to be ideal. If they can get something really, really good sooner, great. But if there's something that aligns really well and supports teachers and students in implementation and comes out within 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 at the most at the outside, I think that's the timing.
So, so would you kind of patch up some of the stuff that you currently have and just put something out there that's, you know, going to be more recent and say, hey, I have something out here for 6 months. We're going to, you know, just Band-Aid approach, I would call it. Or do you think the investment would be better to really just dig in new program, because you are telling me I have a 3-year window? You know, how do I best spend my resources at this point? Do I try to get the do I try to get something out there and get the name out, but it might not be 100%, or do I wait and create new? So I think, you know, how would you respond to that?
Good question. You know, and this is where I have a little bit of, on one shoulder I've got my teacher self going, take your time, do it right, give it to me in perfection, and then on my other shoulder I've got my publisher side going, we've got revenues to make, we've got profits to you know, report, and I need to make a hit in this market, and then once I get a hold in it, I can keep it for a while, because that's the nature of, at least my understanding of K through 12. So if there's some way to do it in between, if I had to do something right away, if I had to have something, I need something to present to my sales force by next August that they can take to market right away, at a very minimum, focus on getting under those big umbrella topics.
Well, I was going to say, like, is there a particular market that you would say, you know, focus on K-5 or go to high school, or, you know, where is the big, if you're going to do that, if we're going to do something, because I don't think the publishers are going to wait 3 to 4 years. I think they will probably want to have a foothold. So where should they spend their resources?
If I were going to try to get something out very, very quickly, I would start with K through 5.
Why is that?
The need is bigger, and the grade bands, the big, huge difference in NGSS from the previous standards is the grade bands are individual grades. So it's very specific for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, which previously it was K through 5 students should know this. Now it's kindergarten students are expected to be able to do and understand and observe, and so they're very specific for the grade bands, and I would just hammer out the grade bands, work my way up.
Okay. So just wanted to give you a quick summary of all the questions. I want to give the audience an opportunity now to ask any and all remaining questions. We have, just to let you know, we have recorded this session, and we'll be sharing this out with anybody who is interested in this. And we will also be sending you a short survey just to let us know how we've done and whether this type of Q&A session with an expert is something that's valuable that we should continue to bring to you. So looking at one final question from David, K-5 differences are huge. Yes, but what about the fact that schools here have cut back so much in K-3 science education? So on one hand, you're telling me I got to put it there, but on the other hand, there's no money in it. So how do we rectify that?
One of the things that I would refer you to is, and this is not something that's going to impact the 2013-2014 school year, but right now there are science, math, engineering teachers and administrators teamed up creating model tasks based on NGSS that are integration of Common Core and NGSS. These model tasks are expected to be published this winter on the Next Gen website, and they're intended to support teachers in their ability to create their curriculum. So they're going to also be publishing their project planning materials. So the teachers, it may seem like right now that's dried up, but the push is coming back. And you cannot fully implement NGSS without starting in kindergarten through 5th grade through 6th grade, because the expectation is by the time they get to me in sophomore, junior year, that they have been exposed to all of these standards. And that's got to happen over time, or it's not going to happen, or they won't be successful. The students won't be successful. So I'm not sure. The schools have cut back a lot of funding, but I'm seeing a ramp up. Carroll County just invested in the Discovery program for K through 8, and that's all science, but it's integrated with Common Core. So
I guess in closing, I'm going to just ask you one last question, and that would be, if you had to tell the folks on the phone today who are leading the next generation science standard product creation, what are the 3 top things you would leave them with as they go back to their teams and so forth? What, from a classroom perspective, what would you like to tell them? In 3 key bullet points.
Okay. Well, that's easier said than done. The first thing is be very, very hesitant when you're educating your sales force to have discussions with teachers. Be very hesitant to have them say that your products are currently aligned. Teachers are very wary of this because it's so new, and I've heard people say this, and I think it's just a matter of trying to understand the changes that have happened or that are happening. The other thing is I can't say it enough, obviously, because I keep saying it. Please focus on the big ideas of the science and engineering skills, the cross-cutting concepts, and the core ideas, because truly we're trying to get across a depth of knowledge and understanding for students, more so than just memorizing a lot of facts and regurgitating them back. And then lastly, if you're putting something together and have a means of demonstrating the collaborative cross-disciplinary nature of it, that's going to give you, I think, more strength. So if it combines, if you can say honestly and show how it integrates Common Core, math and English and science and NGSS, it'll give you that much more strength.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, and I want to thank the audience today for participating in our first ever Lunch and Learn. Really, really appreciate everyone's time, and I think without any other questions, we are adjourned. So thank you so much, and again, if you'd like a copy of this presentation or the audio, please do contact us, and we will look forward to seeing you at the next Lunch and Learn. Thank you.